Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind, episode 113.
And if we look at weaknesses as a way of like, oh, so this is the doorway for me to be strong, and as I'm strong, I can support my family and my dreams. Oh, man, go chase after those challenges and weaknesses. Embrace it. Hunt fear down.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Aisake Vuikadavu. Aisake spent 6 years in a boarding school in Fiji growing up and was saved by being involved in a military coup due to following a prompting he received 2 years earlier. Along the way, he experienced many things that tested his personal value and connection to the Lord. He deliberately played small and avoided opportunities that helped him advance because he feared how successful he would be. His experiences and the lessons he learned has helped him to relate to and help numerous people he is currently mentoring from all over the world. Aisake is happily married to Melinda, and they are the parents of 2 beautiful girls. Welcome, Aisake.
Hey, thank you, Rebecca.
We're excited because I'm kind of getting his name right. So, do you want to go ahead and briefly tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Firstly, this is the first thing out of my mind. When I go for lunch, I use my little girl's pink lunchbox that has all the Disney princesses on it, and the people at where I work at are totally jealous. And first time I did it was just out of accident because I didn't want to put it in a plastic bag, and I saw that and I grabbed it, and that's been my lunchbox ever since. And 3 days ago, I woke up and I went to my table in the kitchen, and there was this lunchbox and a note. And my little 7-year-old had prepared my lunch the night before and wrote me a little love note saying, all the best, Dad, and have fun at work. Oh, and write a letter to Mom to let her know that you love her. And enjoy the day like the sun.
That's awesome.
So I felt so blessed to be a dad, and I don't know why that came out, but that's the first thing out of my mouth when you ask the question.
Well, and I did tell Aisake that I listened to a different interview that he did, and I was really intrigued by what a wonderful father he was and how, he took that responsibility. So you just took it very seriously, and I was really impressed with that. So sounds great. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about maybe some hobbies or profession that you have?
Yes, I love dancing, and I taught Zumba for about 3.5 years down in St. George. I love music, and I love rugby. I think it's a very passionate sport that, a lot of people could really benefit from learning about. And traveling and eating, because my wife loves to cook, and she doesn't use a recipe, so I'm like the first guinea pig. I remember when I first dated her, I had never broke 200 in my life. The 3rd week of the dating, I broke 200. I thought, yes, I have achieved manhood status. I have gone over 200.
Is that important in Fiji?
No, it's just it was important for me because I was like a skinny kid growing up, man. We had to try so hard to gain weight. And growing up, my parents, I know they worked, but we struggled as a family. I remember my mom telling me, saying you know what? Our family is kind of known as the family that eats greens because that's all we could afford. We couldn't afford chicken or all the fun stuff.
Wow.
And so it was, looking at some of my pictures in boarding school, oh man, I look emaciated. So breaking over 200, I was like, yes,
that was exciting.
Become a man.
That's great.
I haven't seen 200. So right now, I tell my wife, I'm working hard to hit my perfect body weight. Since I broke that, I've never been back down. So I thank my wife for that. She's a great cook. My profession, I work as a mentor, or people call it coach or life coach. I personally prefer mentor. Why? I don't know, but just the way I feel about that word mentor as opposed to, like a life coach. And I really resonate with that. And with what I do, I mentor and coach people from all over the world. They call in, getting some help. We have about 30 minutes for the call. And what I love about it is I've noticed that regardless of where in the world you are, everyone has about the same issues.
That's interesting.
Different country, different continent, but same issues.
Wow.
And one thing I've really noticed, I'd say this is about 95% of the time. People are complaining and saying, you know what, I'm trying to do this and it's not working. I'm trying to do this and not working. And so ask them, what do you want? And there's a long pause. A lot of people have no idea what they want. But looking back at their lives, they've achieved a lot, but it's because it's what others wanted of them.
Wow.
It's what other people thought, hey, you know what? If you got to be valued, if you got to be validated, you got to do this.
Wow.
And they're doing it for so long, and they come to a point and realize, like, you know what? I don't really enjoy doing this.
Yeah, they're not really happy.
They're not. And the sad thing is when I ask them, what do you want? They're almost saying, like, it's wrong. It's guilty for me to say what I want. No, let me go and serve others. So I share with them, like, you know what? You're using that word serve in a wrong way. You're trying to serve others because you think, hey, you know what? If you help others, maybe it'll take care of your own issues.
Yeah, that you'll look better to other people, basically.
They'll look better.
Selfish.
They will look better. And one thing I found is, for people, they love meeting everyone else, but the last person in the world they want to meet is themselves.
Yeah.
Their true, authentic self.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, to...
It is very scary. I've walked that path, and oh my goodness. And that's another reason why I do mentoring, is because I want to help people save 5 years, 10 years, even 15 years of their life from the mistakes I made.
That's great. I'd love to hear more about that. I mean, there's some interesting things that we talked about in your bio, like how, with the military coup, and then also that walk that you made, the many things that you experienced that helped test those personal values and the connection to the Lord. Those are some interesting things to talk about. I'd love to hear more about that journey.
Oh, yeah, sure. As soon as I got done with boarding school, I got accepted to BYU Hawaii. And all I had to do was wait about 3 weeks and then get on the plane and I'll be in Hawaii. But I thought, you know what? I'll just have fun around it and see what's coming up. And I remember the day as if it was yesterday. There was an ad in the papers and saying, hey, we're looking for 400 young men to come and try out for a military officer training. And I thought, you know what? 400, no big deal. I've got 3 weeks. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm not doing anything around here, so I might as well just try it out for the fun of it. And so I just tried it out, had fun with it, and out of that 400, they ended up picking 13 people to go through a boot camp. And I was one of the 13 that was picked.
Wow.
And I turned to my mom and said, like, Mom, what do I do? I'm ready to go to Hawaii here. They want me to go through this. It's 5 weeks. And, my mom just told me, whatever you want to do. And so I thought, you know what? I'll give it a try. I'll give it a whirl just to see how far this goes. And so that boot camp was 5 weeks long. The normal boot camp normally took about 2 or 2.5 months to 3 months or something like that. But it was sandwiched in because they wanted to test a new method of boot camp out. So out of that 400, they picked 13. I was one of those 13. We went through one of the hardest experiences in my life. Mentally, physically, it was just really challenging. We'd be going all day, crawling around in the mud, doing all this military drills. And at night, just when we thought we'd be, going to sleep, they took us to the classroom, opened up the board, and said, okay, you've got until, they said, by the time we come back in here in the morning, you've got to finish a 1,000-word essay on this topic.
Wow.
And go. So here you are physically fatigued, and you had to be mentally on the game. And not only that, when we got to our barracks, we were so tired, but we'd have inspections in the mornings. And so with those inspections, everything had to be straight. And so I ended up spending a lot of that boot camp on the floor, on a dusty wooden floor, just so that my bed would be in presentation mode.
Oh, wow.
I'm in my bed. Yes, it was 5 of the hardest weeks. And what they did was, at the end of that 5 weeks, whoever came out on top would go to England, and then the other person go to New Zealand and Australia for military schools. And I ended up getting sent to England. So that's how I ended up there. Now, after England, I came home and I was sent out to Egypt. So worked on the Egyptian-Israeli border, just making sure that the two sides kept to their truce, the agreement that they made.
So is this with the Fiji government then, or, I mean?
Yeah, with the Fiji military. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got sent to England and with a military academy there. And it's called Sandhurst Military Academy. Their American counterpart is West Point Military Academy. So they're like brother-sister academies. But in Egypt, I remember this one day, this feeling just came out of the blue. I have no idea where it came from, but it said, like, Aisake, you're not where you need to be. Yes, you've achieved a lot, but you need to be somewhere else. And for the first time in my life, I had this feeling of, a mission. Up until then, all I knew about missionaries were white shirt, name tags, and carry scriptures or whatever they do. That's the extent. But I called home and talked with the church leaders in our area and got the interview and ended up getting a mission call while I was still in Egypt to serve in Salt Lake for 2 years. Okay, wow. I'm in Salt Lake halfway through my mission, and then I get news that there was a military coup in Fiji.
Wow.
And some of the people that I went through that boot camp with, that group of 13,
yeah,
one of them was involved in that coup. And he was in the unit that I wanted to join, but because I had made a decision, you know what? I'm either going to take this military route and make it happen, or I can, just do the family route. And the reason why I thought that way was because my dad was in the military all his life, and he would be away from home for a year at a time.
Wow.
And so for me, it was either, do I want to be like my dad and be away from home for a year at a time, or do I want to choose family? And of course, with the U.S. military, it's kind of different. But back then, that was my military exposure. Either spend a year away from home with your family or be with your family. Which one is it? And that's why I picked, I'm going on a mission so I can spend time with my family.
Wow. Was that part of the personal values and the connection to the Lord that you're talking about, that you made a different choice than what you had seen? Okay, this story has come up, but we didn't discuss it, but it just came up, so I guess it needs to be shared. In boarding school, it was a Methodist boarding school. We didn't have seminary or, institute classes. And I remember my mom giving me the promise, and she said, you know what, you can't do seminary because you're in boarding school. So your only option is there's something called a home study course. And so I thought, okay, I'll do that. And my mom told me, I remember this, she promised me, Aisake, if you do this diligently, whatever you put your mind to, whatever your goals are, you'll achieve it. That's all she needed to do. I was like, okay, I'm banking everything on the seminary home study thing. So in boarding school, homework time in the classroom started at 6 p.m., 6 to 9:30. I remember every single day for those 6 years in boarding school. Wow.
First thing I did, as soon as I got in, I did all that seminary home study thing done, and then I did my homework.
Wow. And that helped you be a lot more successful and, like you said, connected to the Lord. Maybe you made better choices because
yeah. It helped me be more aware and, kind of make better choices. And one of my goals that I never shared with anyone except my mom was the first day I walked into the boarding school. And this boarding school in Fiji is more like a traditional boarding school where, a lot of government leaders have gone through that school. And so it's kind of seen as like, oh, hey, this is like the building ground of all the government leaders and whatnot. And I walked in there was this big board in the main school block. It's kind of set up in a bridge system. And there were the names of all the rugby captains, all the cricket captains, all the valedictorians from when the school started. And I looked at the valedictorian board like, you know what, I want to get my name up there. It was just, let's see what can happen, And as I was doing my home study thing, my mom told me, hey, you know what? If you're diligent with this, you'll achieve your goal. So for 6 years, I did it. Look up there. I can't want to put my name up there. I just imagined my name up there. And I graduated valedictorian.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
For 6 years and simple principle.
That is great. Well, and did that help? I mean, in your bio, you talked about playing it small and avoiding opportunities that would help you advance because you were fearful of being successful. Did that help to change that paradigm, that it was okay to be successful? And maybe, how did you get over that fear and decide that you could put yourself out there to be something more, I guess?
Rebecca, you're so inspired with your questions because that's exactly where it started.
That's great. So just being able to see yourself doing something versus, everyone has a wish. And is that the inspiration behind what you're doing now with your mentoring?
What happened is, I'll go back to, in Fiji, I think it's these British systems, they have prize-giving ceremonies at the end of the year. I think they have it here in the U.S. too. But I remember very, very clearly, after I got my award and my trophies, I was walking down from the church, the boarding school church, and the thought came to my mind, like, you know what, Aisake? You've achieved all of this here. What about those people who haven't achieved? Okay, let's go and, see what it feels like. And I was just thinking about it as like, oh, yeah, whatever. But little did I realize that was the start of everything going downhill. I started getting fearful, like really fearful. It wasn't just, I'm like, oh my goodness, no, I can't do this. No, I'll be in front of people. I can't do that. And I started deliberately going the other way. See, this is how dangerous it is. When you start a path like that, you may kind of entertain a playful thought, but it's so dangerous, you can end up doing it deliberately. And that's what happened to me.
That you weren't purposely doing it deliberately, but because you were scared, like you said, you were kind of moving backwards, right? I mean, you weren't like thinking, I'm going to sabotage this, but because you were scared, you were kind of self-sabotaging. Is that what I'm getting out of it?
It first started out as like a little experiment, deliberate. And then it got real. And you're like, oh my goodness, I can't do this again. I can't. It got real.
And how did you change that? I mean, how did you turn it around?
Even after I got married and had kids, I still had it. That's how dangerous it got. It totally got a hold of me. And my wife kept saying, like, this is not you. There's something in here. If you're asking, was there like a turning point? I would say there were turning points. There were a series of things, a series of events that happened. I realized, like, wow, you know what? If I'm going this way, number one, if my life is over, what do I have to offer? What about my wife? What about my kids? But deeper inside of me was a feeling that, this gut-twisting feeling that you have not really given of yourself. You have not really been honest with yourself. Oh, that feeling that, everybody has it. But the difference is, I know some of us will bury it with other things. Some of us will tend to bury it with, I'm just going to go serve others. No, we really cannot give what we have, what we don't have. Yeah. I'm going to go love others. No, you cannot give love if you don't have it. So I was at that point. That's just, exactly, you have nothing else. You're just trying to pretend. What kind of husband can you be? What kind of father can you be? You're not even being present with your kids. You're busy watching TV, and when you're supposed to serve in your church calling, you're going the other way deliberately. Like, what's happened? Deep inside, you know that this is not you.
Did you have mentors along the way that helped kind of change that and make?
Yeah, Rebecca, you're reading my mind, man. I was like, the next I was out of my mouth, and you said the mentors. Yes, mentors are so important. I had several mentors along the way. Mentors I've never met because their services are pretty pricey, so I just bought their books. It's like, hey, I'm learning from this. And then there were mentors that face-to-face had made a difference. One of my mentors that I really hold dear to my heart is Kirk Duncan.
Tell us about it.
Kirk Duncan, he's amazing, very gifted, and, maybe some people know him about his body language training, but his ability to cut away all the fluff and be able to address me head on. That what got me convinced, like, okay. Because, when you try to kid yourself, you try to cover things up, you end up doing it to other people and people start believing it. But if there's one person that can cut through all that fluff and talk to you, like, oh my goodness, this guy just nailed me.
Yeah, that you're not really fooling anybody. But
no, not really fooling anybody. And because of that, I realized, you know what, I really want to give back. And I want to reach out and help other people who are going through the same thing I went through. I want to save them, 5-10 years of their life so it doesn't take that long to get to where they need to go. And that's why as I've done my mentoring, my goal is to help people see what they're not seeing. Yeah. And I've had a lot of people get on the phone, talk to me all about the beautiful stuff. And I've been there. I don't even hear it. Like, no, let's talk about the real you. Let's talk about what you're trying to avoid.
Before we go on, let us take a minute and hear about our sponsors. Changing a paradigm takes some study, but like me, you are probably super busy. That's why we've teamed up with Audible. Go to our website, theluminousmind.net. Get a free month of Audible with 2 audiobooks, thousands of titles in exchange for only books that you absolutely love. You too can be learning on the go to keep that fire burning. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Aisake Vuikadavu. Let's kind of talk about some of your challenges that you had along the way, and then maybe what you learned. I'd love to know if mentoring others has helped you learn kind of more about yourself as well. Is that a possibility?
Oh, absolutely. When different issues come up, as I teach and help others, I'm learning myself too. I'm writing notes down. It's like, I got to go tell my wife this. And I share my wife and say, yeah, you had that issue too. It's like, oh, wow. And so as a mentor, I feel it's like one of I'll say a cheat sheet profession, because as you're helping others, oh man, you're totally helping yourself. And it's interesting because it comes in trends. Last week, there were people coming in and their issue was looking for validation and doing different things. And so people will seek validation with a lot of different issues. And I realized for me, I was seeking validation doing different things. So even to the extent of sports, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll go and play sports and get my validation from there. But when sports season was over, like, I got to look somewhere else.
Yeah. Well, and as being a father and husband, those are areas that we don't receive validation. And maybe, that's when people start looking outside of their family. Like you said, they're just doing stuff to puff themselves up, kind of in a selfish way. We say that, I see people all the time. It's like, I'm serving, like you said, I'm serving others. And really, it's more for their own ego stroking than to really serve.
Absolutely. And you can call up a shot. You can call people off on that really quickly. You can tell and feel. And that's where I was. I was doing all the different things. But then I came home. Oh, yeah. Quick story here. So me and my 2 little girls, we were playing this pretend game. And so I was doing all these moves in the kitchen. And I was like, okay, guess who this is? And so they said, this is our 4-year-old. And so I tried pretending being like my 7-year-old. And they both guessed, yeah, that's a 7-year-old. And then my 7-year-old, this is when she was 5, okay? And this is how impactful kids are. She made this, like, Hulk posture, like, angry, who am I? Boom. I felt like a stick was through my heart. Like, what? That is the first impression they have of their dad?
Wow.
I got humbled right there.
Yeah.
Because here was Aisake. He never gets mad at other people or other coworkers. If they're doing something wrong, he's just pretty chill. But with his kids, the first impression they have of him in a game is that was serious.
Yeah.
That was a humbling call.
Yeah, wow.
And then I realized as fathers, and I had a great discussion with my wife, a while back, that we look to each other for validation. And then I realized, we each have our own journey. My wife is on her journey. I am on my journey, and we embrace where each other is at. Our validation needs to come from the Lord, and that we are good enough. I'm not seeking for my wife, or vice versa. It needs to be up there.
Yeah.
Because who you are is good enough. If you're breathing, you're good enough.
Well, and when we have that validation from the Lord versus people around us, it seems like we're more tolerable to be around, don't you think? You're not trying to seek that validation, and you're not filling your head full of ideas of what you think your relationship should be with people. Does that make sense, or?
Yep, absolutely. You know what? And getting lunches made and love notes made, I think I've overcome that. And I realized, what your kids do, that's an indication, big time indication. And I am so grateful for my little girls because they have taught me so much. I grew up in a situation where my dad was away all the time, and when he came home, he had a lot of problems with my mom, and it was challenging to see. And that was my first model of what fatherhood is. I got hit with a stick, a belt, anything that he could get a hold of.
Wow.
And so I realized, hey, you know what? That's where I grew up in it, but it doesn't mean that that's how you need to treat my kids. And so I had the opportunity to choose, and we all have the opportunity to choose, whether our parents have been abusive or whatever it is. And I feel in the past I've asked, why do those things happen to me? And then I realized, you know what? Those things happened for me. And that's a higher level of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Because we each have our own stories. We each have our own hardships. But as we look at it and realize that those things happened not to you, but for you, it takes you to a whole different plane of living.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to have those bad experiences so that that we want to make a concerted effort to change. Is that what
Yes.
What you're saying?
Yeah, not only to change, but also as you go through it, you can have so many other people, walk through it. And I have a little formula that if you are going through something, there's at least 10,000 people out there who are going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And you want to be the one to stand up and share, hey, you know what? Let's do a different route over here and I'll help you because I've walked your path.
Yeah. Well, and let's talk a little bit more about your mentoring and like the services you've offered and then maybe some successes that you've seen with some of the people that you've helped.
Yes, my mentoring, in general, it's focused on, fathers. I call them the tender warriors. Warriors because, they protect and provide for the family, and tender in the sense that, they're able to relate and open their hearts. Because as men, we kind of grow up being told that crying and showing your emotions, that's a big no-no. You do that and you've lost your manhood or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But I realize, as you embrace that, it allows you to connect.
And don't you think, too, that maybe that's where some of the anger that you saw your father display is that he didn't dare express those emotions because, like I said, that's not manly to do. And so sometimes those emotions come out as anger when it's really something else.
Yeah. And guess who it comes out towards? Not your coworkers, not your associates, not your friends, but your family. In this case, it was my two little girls.
Yeah.
And that was humbling because I would never even do that to my wife. Like we were in disagreements and I'm just chill. But somehow with the girls, I would tell my wife, man, the girls can just really bring out the worst in me. And oh, wait a minute. That does not sound good at all.
Yeah. That you're taking out your anger in other situations on them. Probably because they won't lash back at you, right?
Absolutely. And that's a humbling call to make. And as fathers, and maybe there are mothers out there listening to this that may have that temper challenge. But our children bring out the worst in us so that we can clear it and release it, not to be hidden and pushed down. And part of my mentoring, I'm doing a group mentoring here in November, is getting together a group of, I call them the tender warriors. Even though it's open to all fathers, I welcome the mothers too. Because in some instances, in some families, when you tell fathers to do this, it's like, oh, no, I know everything about this. Because that's where I was. But as mothers go through this, you'll be able to get an insight, from a male point of view on, what your spouses may be going through and how you can assist in their situation. Because as you travel, you can see, oh, this is what we do. I have a lot of respect for mothers because, my own mother went through so many things. And my dad, right now he's doing great. We're the best of friends. But back then, he did everything in the book to deserve a divorce from my mom. But my mom kept plotting in. Kept going. And it humbled me. I realized, wow, someone's helping the mothers out there and they're improving, but who's helping the dads? And that's why I decided, what? I'm going to plant this flag down and claim and own it because I walked it. I've been on the other side, being that little child. Now I am that father.
Wow. How do you find people to mentor? Do they seek you out? How did you get into that business?
I do presentations on stage and invite people who want to do more mentoring and word of mouth. I have daily videos out there to share with people and invite them to the website. And I've worked with, I just want to share a story here with a dad I'm working with right now. He lives out in New York. And so here's a father who's got two little kids who's adopted. And when we first talked about a month ago, he was just hating life. And he's like working out so hard, but his wife isn't working hard, not working out, putting on a lot of weight, you know. I'm sure a lot of people may be able to relate to that as you listen to this. And so he was wondering, like, what do I do? I'm working out, but my wife's not doing anything, and she's just at home. I'm the one working, and she's a stay-at-home mom. What do I do? What do I do? And so I asked him just a couple of questions, and I asked him, hey, are you guys having, like, family prayer with your kids? Are you praying with your wife? I'm not even praying with my wife. We, like, sleep in different rooms.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, that was at that point about a month ago. Now, as I talked to him today, he was just so grateful. Like, he mentioned it. Every time I call, I'm so grateful because you've always been consistent and you only have one answer for me. And you've always asked me, hey, go pray about it. If you had a question, go pray about it. He's now praying with his wife, praying with his kids as a family, and he's seeing all these changes happening. And the big thing is that, you know, him and his wife are talking, you know, they're closer together, but he's still going, still in the process. They're still having challenges, but it's much more manageable. And then he realized one thing, and he shared with me that, you know, I kept on telling him, you know, pray for your answer, you'll get it. And then I shared with him my why for mentoring. Simply put, my big reason for mentoring and doing all this is to help people reconnect with their Heavenly Father or their higher power. Because at the end of the day, they can have clarity and alignment in all that they do. I firmly believe is that, you know, Heavenly Father, the Lord, can make more out of people than they can of themselves.
Yeah.
I shared this with him. There was a long pause on the phone. And he's like, wow, thank you. I feel loved. So here's a guy, New York, never seen him face-to-face before, but saying, you know what, I feel loved. Thank you.
Wow.
That was huge.
Well, and kind of going back to what we were talking about before, if we care more about what our Maker thinks of us than trying to please and kind of look good to the world, that does affect, you know, our overall relationships. And then, you know, it does come back to that.
Yeah, that's so key. And I wanted to add to that, Rebecca, is it helps, especially with family relationships, because I was trying to look all good for my wife, I thought. But then I figured out, like, no, Aisake, you're kidding yourself. You're just trying to look good for yourself, because the way you communicate with her is differently. It's not the way you feel loved. She feels loved differently. Yeah. And so you're doing this all for yourself. I was humbling, you know. I was grateful because as I'm trying to see, hey, you know, ask the Maker, Heavenly Father, the boss, what you'd like me to do, all of a sudden, my wife's like, whoa, babe, you look so different. I haven't done anything differently. Oh, you just look different, and my children love me more. And as soon as I walk through the door, they're running and hugging me. I came home on Monday, and as I put my shoes down, you know, by the door, and I looked up, there was like this arrow on the wall. And as I followed the arrow, all along the way from the front door to the living room, there were strips of paper every half a foot, a strip of paper. And it was to dad. And it opened up, it was a little love message. You're awesome. You are amazing. And thank you for being who you are, Dad. I'm like, wow. It was my little girls. They did it on their own. My wife said, I have no idea where they got that idea from.
That's neat.
And that's a blessing, you know.
Yeah.
Priceless blessing.
Well, and I was kind of wondering, when you were talking, you know, we talked a lot about prayer and getting kind of that inspiration. I think about some men, if they think they bring flowers to their wife, that's them trying to, you know, look good and to please her. Whereas if you're getting inspiration from the Lord, he's going to maybe tell you, you know, maybe she needs help here versus, you know, the flowers, you know. Yeah. Does that make sense? I mean, do you feel like that prayer helps with that inspiration of what the individuals around you need?
Oh, totally. Because if I don't pray, I am giving to people the way I think is awesome. I think, oh yeah, if I give flowers to my wife, totally awesome. Because that's what everybody does, right? That's all like the romantic stories. That's all the Disney movies. You gotta take flowers to your wife. That's all the commercials. That's what all of advertising about. Take flowers to your wife. And actually for my wife, it's like, hey, babe, if you want to empty the dishwasher, oh man, I'll feel so loved. Seriously, how romantic? It's like emptying the dishwasher. 0 on a scale in the world. But for my wife, it's like everything. Everything. And that's the power of, you know, being in tune and asking for help. And our girls, you know, if I try to do things for one of my girls, yeah, it'll seem fine. I'll get her new shoes and clothes and whatnot. But for her, it's letters, little love letters like, hey, I love you. Thank you so much. that just huge.
Wow. Yeah.
And he points to the point where, and he just goes on, in a short key message that the Lord can make more of you than you can of yourself. Actually, I woke up this morning so tired. I love mornings. I get up around 4 a.m. to do my thing. And I'm just so tired. I got a long weekend. I can't get up. But the phrase running through my mind for about half an hour was, I can make more of you than you can of yourself. I can make more of you than you can of yourself. And I realized, whoa, okay, all right, boss. And where my tiredness ends, where my body ends, that's where he starts.
Yeah.
And so I've been running on that energy all day long.
Wow, that's great. Well, we talked about prayer, but do you have any other habits that you feel like have been helpful to you to change that paradigm?
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm not sure what religious books everyone reads. My personal choice is the Book of Mormon. I read from it. This is personally for me is 10 pages on a daily basis. And what I do, I have my phone next to me. It's on an app called Workflowy, or you can have a piece of paper there. And what happens is as I'm reading through my scriptures, it doesn't matter what the story is about. I can be learning about war. I can learn about families crossing the ocean. I can learn about someone, building a ship or whatnot. But the inspiration that comes in are not related to that at all. For example, I get inspiration of, hey, this is what you need to tell your clients, or you're going to be speaking on stage next. This is a topic. Totally out of the blue. And, do this for your wife. I'm like, what? And then I realize as early in the morning, as I'm spending time to study my religious book, my scriptures, that is just a simple gateway for me to get the inspiration I need to help me go through the day. Wow. That is huge. Wow. Huge.
So you're getting inspiration in other areas of your life. It's just more than just, like you said, reading a story. It's helping to bring that inspiration into
that. I personally say that is just a gateway, and that is a sign to say, hey, you know what? It's like the Lord saying, okay, Aisake, I got the simple commandment. If you want to follow it, I'll bless you. If you think it's a bore, okay, it's up to you.
That's great.
And I've had times where it's like, I get up in this and I tell my wife, whoa, this is my power hour. This is where I get to know what to do, for my work, for my business, for our family. It is powerful. I even told my wife, hey, you know what? If there's something happens here, this is the first thing I'm taking out. Not my computer. I'm taking this book out because it's got a lot of stuff. And I got notes written all over the place, everywhere. And it has some of those notes have no relation to what's in the scriptures. It's just the inspiration that came in, like, hey, do this, consider this. And then I realized, the wise men of the ages, did they have like a computer to look at? No. They were just in tune and they respected and honored their maker, and that's where everything comes from. And that's the gist of my mentoring. I tell people, hey, you know what? I will help you. My goal is to help you reconnect with your higher power, your Heavenly Father, so that you can have clarity and alignment in all that you do. I don't want you relying on me all the time. No, you need to turn to Him, because there's going to be a time when I'll leave this planet. Then what? What do you have to pass on to your kids? Pass on to them that they need to reconnect with their Heavenly Father, because that's where their clarity and alignment comes from, and because He can make more of them than they can of themselves.
Wow. So do you work with just people of your faith, or do you work with people of every faith?
Every faith. And there are some people who do not believe in a God. And say, hey, that's fine. Go and talk to the mountain. Go and talk to the tree. Just something bigger than you. Ask them your questions, and then you'll figure out.
That inspiration will come. I mean, like that guy that you're talking about in New York, that everybody's loved, and God's there to answer them regardless of if they believe in Him or not, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because He loves us all, regardless. Because one thing we remember is that we were His children once. And He wants us to succeed. But He has everything there, and He's not going to force it on us. It's there for our taking, whether we want it or not. And I want people to really take and join and own the blessings that are there for them. That's why my main gist in mentoring is, especially the tender words and fathers, is to help people reconnect with their Heavenly Father.
Yeah.
Because that's where the true source of blessings for their lives, for their family comes from. Anything else will not last. Yeah. Anything else is temporary, because that is the legacy they can pass on to their kids for generations to come. To know that, wow, grandpa or great-grandpa was talking to this guy from Fiji, and he told him the importance of reconnecting up there. That is a gift. That is a legacy I want to live.
That's great. Well, I was just going to ask you that. What legacy that you hope to
I
leave.
just read your mind, just one.
You really did. That's funny. And where do you see your business going? Just helping more people? And
Yes, helping more people, and the key is helping more people turn to the Lord. That is my main goal. Regardless of race, religion, geography, because I know that's where everything comes from. And I believe it. I believe it with everything I have. And I'm grateful for the hard, decade or so, or maybe a little bit more than that I went through to help me realize this.
Wow.
Because we are in an age and time right now where the adversary or dark forces or ego, whatever people want to call it, is coming at us full on. And it does not care about being politically correct. So then who are we to try to be politically correct to go through it if the adversary enemy is coming at us?
Yeah.
And shame on us if we're doing that.
And going back to what we were talking about before, the biggest tool that he uses is fear. Anyway, that we're not good enough or whatever.
Yes. And I invite everyone that is listening to this, I invite you to take your right hand, put it to your heart, and I want you to feel that. If you feel it beating, that means you are good enough. And your only thing right now is to share with others who you are. It's going to take maybe a process. It may take some time, but every little step counts because you have a message to share. You have a story to share. And a lot of people say like, well, what am I good at? I have no idea. And my invitation is look to your past. Look for the challenges you went through. That is your strength.
That is great. Yeah, those challenges that we have, we can't discount them. They make us who we are. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And as people looking back to the past, I invite people to look back with gratitude for what's happened.
Great.
Look back with gratitude. There's those things in your heart. Look back with gratitude and move on. Realizing that, you can decide, you can change. And this is not about, making you feel good and inspired. No, this is about you owning who you really are inside. And as you do that, as you turn to our Heavenly Father, our Maker, and once again, He can make more of you than you can of yourself.
Yeah.
And our weaknesses are there, and they end up being our strengths. Our weaknesses end up being our strengths. And if we look at weaknesses as a way of like, oh, so this is the doorway for me to be strong, and as I'm strong, I can support my family and my dreams. Oh, man, go chase after those challenges and weaknesses. Embrace it. Hunt fear down, because behind every fear is an opportunity for you to grow and provide for your family. Because all the advances in the world, they all started from a problem. They all started from something of fear. That's all it is. And there were a handful of people who decided, you know what, I'm going to chase this down. I'm going to find it what I want. Those are the inventors. Those are the people who have been extremely successful because they hunted it down. They found out what's the problem, because behind every problem is a solution. And businesses nowadays do it. They call it brainstorm sessions. It's there.
Well, we got to use that same technique in our own life, right?
Absolutely. And one thing about fear is that it loses power once you become aware of it. That's it. And I firmly believe that, the bad feelings and the good feelings in life, they only want three things: to be validated, acknowledged, and recognized. To be validated, acknowledged, and recognized. And so when fear is validated, it disappears. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah, he knew I'm here.
Wow.
And if you keep pushing it down, it's going to start showing up in different ways. You can start getting sick. You can start feeling things in your gut. It just comes up. But if you let it go, wow, you'll find so much.
That's a really powerful thought. Thank you. That was amazing.
You're welcome.
So before we say goodbye, do you want to give us your contact information and so our listeners can get in touch with you?
Sure. Yeah. My email address is Aisake, AISAKE, at energymentor.com. That's INNERGYMENTOR.com. And the website is energymentor.com. And if you want to get a hold of me quick, And I may answer, I may not answer, just depending on where I'm at. It's 801-830-1997. And the number again is 801-830-1997. And what I would love is if you could email me just a short sentence of what your biggest takeaway was from this call, or what really resonated with you. That way I can share with others, because if you're going through that, if that's what you took out, there's at least 10,000 other people out there that could use that sort of insight. So if you could do that, I would be really grateful and very appreciative.
That's wonderful. Well, I do have to tell you, I've said this to my listeners before, but it just seems like, God puts the people in my path that give me a message that I need to hear. I was actually thinking about fear just a couple hours ago. I almost did a Facebook post about it, wondering the fear that we have, if we push past it and get through it, is actually just an opportunity for us to continue to grow. And I think you just answered my question. So I appreciate your time and coming on. You've been an inspiration to me. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you for listening in and taking the time out of your busy schedules. I honor you.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Aisake, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and consider joining our program by going to the scheduling tab to become a fire starter today. Help support the podcast by making all your Amazon purchases through the free Amazon widget on our website. Also, sign up to receive 2 free audiobooks from Audible at theluminousmind.net. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, and now Pinterest. Get our audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider telling your friends about us. Leave us a review. Tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.